Okay, so we've all heard the memes of the Night Haunter, but if you've actually read the Night Haunter's book, I believe that Conrad Coe's story is one of tragedy and mental illness, not one of horror. You might be wondering, Justin, what the hell are you talking about? Obviously, he's a horrific maniac, and he is a horrific maniac. I'm not gonna justify that, but Conrad Coe's story, in a weird way, is sad. And let me explain why. Starting out, Konrad Kosk landed on a little known planet called Nostromo. Nostromo was a very dark planet with almost no sunshine, but was very mineral rich. Had a lot of minerals. And it also had the worst crime rate in all human planets. Now, after landing and having to dig his way out because the core was very soft and it was kind of like eating his pod, he managed to dig his way out and survived. He encountered a horrible, sick individual who is the worst possible criminal you can imagine, who has committed the worst possible atrocities you can even imagine. And Conrad ate him. Yeah, Conrad immediately ate that individual. So Conrad immediately starting out doesn't sound that good. I would argue that if it wasn't the worst possible human possible that Conrad ran into, I don't think Conrad would have eaten them. I think Conrad ate that guy because he sensed not only Conrad ate him because he was hungry, but B, I think Conrad sensed what a monster that guy was, what a sick, twisted, depraved individual that was. Like we're talking rape, murder, theft, just everything, torture, everything, human trafficking. This guy was horrible. He ate him and then he gained all of his memories. This was after less than a few minutes of Conrad being alive. I think Conrad sensed the evil from that guy and, in the most primal way possible, wanted to stop that guy's evil. And then he happened to run into five other horrible criminals just like the first guy. Now, having your first 10 people you meet being this horrible, disgusting abomination of humanity, and then eating them to gain their memories, really immediately right off the bat fucked up Conrad. On top of this, Conrad had an ability called Future Sight, where he could essentially see into the future. Except he could only see the worst possible future. So he'd look at a person and see the worst possible crimes that they could ever commit. Like, could you even imagine having the memories? Could you even imagine going through that? Could you even imagine the first few minutes of you being alive, you go through all this, of seeing the worst possible futures for every human you see, and also gaining the memories of the most twisted individuals ever? That, right off the bat, fucked up Conrad. Because I don't think Conrad was supposed to be this sick, twisted individual. I think he was supposed to be a primarch of justice. But just like how sometimes we life justice in the real world becomes atrocious and just isn't what it's supposed to be, Conrad became a sick, twisted understanding of justice as well. Conrad started killing every criminal he saw and began to eat them. Not cool, but he began to eat them, and no matter how many people he killed and ate, Nostromo's crime never slowed down. The only thing that slowed it down, and not only slowed it down, but stopped Nostromo's crime, was the worst possible torture to every single criminal. So imagine you gain the memories of all these sick individuals, then on top of that, you can only see the worst possible future, and then on top of that, you start killing these criminals, and it only stops when you start torturing these people. Now, at first, he didn't enjoy the torturing. He thought it gross, but he would still do it to stop the crime. But then after a while, he really started enjoying it. Like, there's a whole hard-to-watch scene where there's this old lady who's trying to commit suicide, and by this point, Conrad went from only punishing the worst criminals possible to, oh, you jaywalked? Well, time to skin you. This woman tried to commit suicide, and he skinned her alive while saying, I take no pleasure in this, while actively, as in a monologue, was less like, oh yes, that lie made my heart beat even harder. So yeah, Conrad became a sick, twisted fuck on Nostromo. Until, eventually, what did Conrad do? He took over the planet. He essentially went to the lords and the rich people of that planet and basically made them submit to him, and the ones who didn't got horribly flayed, and then the other ones just submitted immediately. Because remember, the Night Haunter, Conrad, his main ability is feel. His second main ability is stealth. So this guy is terrifying. Like you would commit a horrible crime, and you would feel the most possible feel and pain you could. But then that also meant that, oh yeah, you jaywalked. Well, time to skin you. Yeah. So he took over the planet, and over time, the Emperor of Mankind, the Great Crusade, reached Nostromo, and Conrad Kurz was united with his sons, the Night Lords. Now, when Conrad first got reunited with the Imperium, and he found out that he had brothers, there were several Primarchs who met with Conrad on Nostromo, but the only one to look him in the eyes was Fulgrim. And for a while, Fulgrim and Conrad, despite being opposites, actually had a friendship. In fact, before Conrad was given control of his legion, who trained Conrad in terms of military, military structure, in terms of warfare, in terms of logistics? It was Fulgrim. So Fulgrim and Conrad actually grew pretty close, and then Conrad was given control of the Night Lords. Now, in case you're wondering, the Night Lords, the early Night Lords and early Raven Guard were actually very similar. They were both very brutal forces. Both very brutal, both had concentration camps, they were both used a lot of brutality and feel. Except when the Raven Guard were united with their Primarch, Corvus Corax, he kinda roughed that out. He made them less of a field tactic. And the ones who refused to go with the new ways, he straight up exiled. So Corvus took the Raven Guard and kinda roughed out the field. He kinda got rid of it. Meanwhile, Conrad kinda made it worse. Now, the firstborn Space Marines were taken from Taylor's jail cells. These were sick, twisted individuals from day one. And then they were given Conrad's gene seed, and then under the leadership of Conrad. So those guys were fucked. But from the people from Nostromo, he started taking the nobles, the promising nobles, and, the people he thought would make good Night Lords, good Space Marines. So he went about on the Great Crusade, and the Night Lords had an interesting tactic. Instead of killing millions of people like so-called honorable legions like the Ultramarines and Imperial Fists, they would essentially go to a planet, take the children of all of the leaders, skin them alive, throw their skins onto the equivalent of the White House, the Capitol building, with a nicely handwritten note that says, "We'll do it again. Please surrender." That would get people to surrender usually day one, and if they didn't, they'd surrender on day two. Conrad's method of the war was pure feel and just pure disgustingness. Now, one thing to note is when Conrad met the Emperor, second he shook hands with him, he knew that he was going to die. That Conrad was going to be killed by an assassin the Emperor sent after him. So Conrad was a little salty about that. Now, at some point, Wogeldorn and Conrad were sent to a joint military campaign where the Imperial Fist and Night Lords were to take a planet. And Wogeldorn lost his shit when Conrad was torturing the people who already surrendered because they didn't surrender immediately. And Wogeldorn was like, knock that shit off. And Conrad was like, no. Conrad explained that if we torture these people, then the next planet will hear about it and they'll surrender immediately. Wogeldorn said that if you do this, the survivors will have so much hate in their heart, generational hate, that will fester and fester and fester until generations from now, the planet will rebel against the Imperium and they don't even know why they rebelled. That an honorable conquest, even though it will kill millions of people and will destroy the infrastructure, will make the planet actually loyal. Conrad basically spit at him, and the two went into a fight. An argument, not an actual fight. The two argued, but eventually Conrad kind of backed down, seeing just how pissed Wogeldorn was. Seeing it best to leave, he then left the joint military occupation. He continued doing this, and continued massacring people, and again, at the beginning, the Night Lords were kind of like Conrad at the beginning. They didn't enjoy the torture, they didn't enjoy the power. It was just a means to an end. But just like how Conrad did at Nostromo, the Night Lords began to really, really enjoy the torture and the torment, even as much as Conrad. And Conrad began to enjoy it more and more. Now, you know how Conrad was taking the best and brightest from his homeworld? After hundreds of years of being gone, they started only sending him the scum to become Space Marines, meaning the Legion that was already fucked from starting out with criminals, then having Conrad's teachings. At least they had good recruits. Now they were getting the scum, and so Legion became even more poisoned and more depraved and just more degenerate. Until eventually, I believe it was Rogel, Dorn, and the Lion got fed up with Conrad's shenanigans, essentially beat him up and captured him, and said, "Okay, we're tired of you skinning babies. You're gonna come to Taylor, and you're gonna enjoy judgment, and you're gonna endure judgment from our father." Conrad basically stood in his prison cell until he heard that Nostromo fell back into crime. They fell back into crime into their sick, degenerate ways without the Night Haunter, and many Nostromans were begging the Night Haunter to come back to stop the crime. Now, the Night Haunter, by this point, went from a schizophrenic, insane maniac to a schizophrenic, insane maniac with dementia. He wasn't mentally well, but despite that, he escaped his prison cell from the ship and reunited with his Night Lords and headed back to Nostromo, where he immediately exterminated the planet. Now, he said there were no innocents on the planet, because at this point, he hadn't killed an innocent man in his eyes, and this wouldn't change with Nostromo. Nostromo, in his eyes, was an irredeemable mess, and that's why he exterminated it. The Legionnaires who said, "No, I don't want to exterminate my home planet," were promptly killed. Now, at this point, that whole dementia thing with Conrad? Yeah, it got worse. Conrad essentially went into a episode where he was having a schizophrenic/dementia-ridden frenzy, I guess you can say, where he essentially just went berserk and didn't know what was going on around him. When he woke up from this, he realized he killed one of the chapter's serfs. This deeply fucked Conrad in the head, because Conrad, at this point in his eyes, never had killed an innocent man, but this serf never committed a single crime. So Conrad, in his eyes, became a sick individual who needed judgment. And that's when he realized why the Emperor in the future would send an assassin after him. Because Conrad was a criminal. Conrad needed to be killed, just like the people he killed. And so, not that long after, the Horus Heresy happened, and Conrad at this point realized he was a criminal and that the Emperor was going to kill him. And one thing to note is Conrad was an asshole. Conrad could have at any time... At this point, Conrad believed that the Emperor intended for the Great Crusade to happen, and that the Emperor intended for the Primarchs to be scattered, and that he had intended for Sanguinius to be the most loved Primarch, and for Conrad to be the most hated. Now, this is bullshit. At any time, even though Conrad was crazy, he could have stopped being a maniac and could have been more honorable. But he was just like, nah, man, this is my destiny. I can't change destiny. But at the same time, remember, he's not... We are judging him from someone who's in a good state of mind. At least, hopefully we are. I'm probably not. But Conrad was in a fucked state of mind. I can't even describe how messed up this guy was. So, he believed the Emperor intended for him to be like this. And so he was like, okay, well, the Emperor's gonna send an assassin after me. And the reason he's gonna do that is because I'm a sick, depraved criminal because I killed that innocent man. So, I'm gonna become worse. And so, when the Horus Heresy happened, the Night Lords joined Horus in the Drop Site Massacre. Now, during the Drop Site Massacre, we actually saw Corvus Corax about to kill Lorgoi. Now, at this point, Lorgoi was still a man, although he was, chaos corrupted, but he wasn't a demon prince at the time. So, Corvus Corax was about to kill Lorgoi when then the Night Haunter essentially beat up Corvus, or not so much beat him up, but scaled him away. Corvus and the Night Haunter hated each other because they're both cast from the same mold. Essentially, that point where Corvus Corax essentially toned his legion from sick, depraved individuals to honorable stealth operatives? Corvus believed that if Corvus landed on Nostromo instead of the Night Haunter, that Corvus would have been the sick, depraved individual, and the Night Haunter would have been the noble one. I actually believe this. I think Nostromo is what fucked up the Night Haunter. And the Night Haunter hated Corvus because everyone loved Corvus, and everyone hated the Night Haunter, even though they were cast from the same mold. So they both hated each other, but being surrounded by two Primarchs, Corvus decided to retreat, and Lorgoi immediately thanked the Night Haunter and reached out his hand trying to get him to join Chaos, and The Night Haunter basically spat at him, called him gross and cringe, and just kind of flew away. Well, not flew away, but, ran away. And during this whole atrocity, where he basically, made fun of Lorgoy for being a chaos cuck, the Night Haunter found Vulcan. Night Haunter hated Vulcan. That's because Vulcan was the best of the Primarchs and the most humane, while the Night Haunter was obviously the worst. But his idea was, hey, this is all an act. Vulcan's actually as bad as I am. I'm gonna prove that. And so he captured Vulcan and began to torture him in the worst ways possible, causing the most pain possible. And at this point, how he was, even though he was a sick individual, he would commit the worst possible. Okay, so one thing to note is I did say that Konrad, in his eyes, never killed an innocent man. And then I also said he skinned babies alive, but at that time, he never killed an innocent man. In his eyes, killing those babies and killing those civilians who never committed a crime wasn't a crime because he was saving that planet from having millions dead. So in his eyes, I killed one baby. Well, that doesn't matter because would have had to bomb. I might have bombed this orphanage, so then I saved 10 babies. So I'm actually a good guy. So at this point, that whole facade of I'm actually still the good guy completely dissolved after he killed that innocent soul and he joined Horus. He began to take Vulcan and give him the most horrific choices possible that would only result in the deaths of innocents. And Konrad just kept fucking with Vulcan for months and months and months, but Vulcan never cracked until Konrad killed him. And then Konrad found out that Vulcan was a perpetual. This enraged Konrad, and he began to kill him again and again and again and again. But no matter what he did, Vulcan would just get back up. Until eventually Konrad essentially put Vulcan in a maze and told him that his hammer was in the middle of it. Now, Vulcan was unarmored, but made his way through the maze, constantly being jumped, killed, or tortured by Konrad, and then Konrad just flee, and then Vulcan would continue on the maze. Until eventually, Vulcan arrived at his hammer, and Konrad appeared, and basically made fun of him, saying, "Oh yeah, there's a protective shield in front of that hammer. You're never gonna get to it. Ha ha ha." And Konrad made a whole mistake. Konrad is one of the best Primarch duelists, but he's also one of the physically weakest. He let Vulcan get his hands on him, and Vulcan essentially grabbed him. At this point, Vulcan was also mentally fucking insane after all this, and began to slam his head into his shield until it broke. And then he grabbed his hammer, and with one swing, cracked and completely destroyed Konrad's armor, almost killing Konrad, and began to beat him until an inch of his life. And then right when Konrad was about to be beaten to death, Konrad had a smile on his face because he was thinking, "You're just as bad as me, Vulcan." And Vulcan basically, without even knowing what Konrad was thinking, said, "I am not going to kill you. There was still hope for you, Konrad, and I am not as bad as you." Before then using the teleporter and his hammer to escape. Now, Konrad at this point was even more enraged, but Horus told Konrad, "Hey, go slow down the Dark Angels, because if the Dark Angels reach me, I'm fucked." Now, in a fail fight, the Dark Angels would absolutely fucking annihilate the Night Lords, but the Night Lords are never gonna fight fail. So they kept doing hit-and-one skirmishy tactic against the Dark Angels to slow them down, until eventually a massive warp storm cut off the Dark Angels, Ultramarines, and Blood Angels from Terra. They could no longer see the Astronomicon, and so they believed that the Emperor was dead and that Horus won. So they essentially developed a tiny mini Imperium around Macragge, the Ultramarines' home planet. So just to clarify, you had the Dark Angels, Ultramarines, and Blood Angels thinking that, damn, our dad's dead, Horus won. So they had their own little pocket empire called, I think, Imperium Secundus? I don't know. And the Night Haunter and the Night Lords were trapped in there, and they were just being skirmishy little dicks. Until eventually Konrad and the Lion had a duel. Well, I believe Konrad got his ass whooped, but then a few months later, or like a year later, because this was like a year-long conflict, the two of them met after years of this skirmishy warfare, and Konrad essentially started talking shit to the Lion, which led to the Lion trying to stab Konrad, but then led to Konrad stabbing the Lion, which then led to, a bit of a kerfuffle, until Konrad was able to escape again. Well, then, at a later date, he was captured by the 3 Loyalist Legions, and he told him, they basically asked him, why'd you turn traitor? And he said, oh, because the Emperor in the future is going to send an assassin after me. And they're like, if the Emperor is going to send an assassin after you, the assassin won't be able to get through this warp storm. So meaning the assassin hasn't been sent yet. Meaning that the Emperor is still alive. So all three legions immediately just dissolved Imperium Secundus and immediately started flying toward going through the warp storm to get to Terra to save the Emperor. Now at this point, Konrad full-bore went into dementia mode while he was captured by those three legions. And during the warp storm, the Dark Angels and Ultramarines lost the Blood Angels. The Blood Angels and Sanguinius got separated. And both the Lion and Gilliman basically went to Konrad and just started beating him up, saying, where's Sanguinius? Use your future sight. Tell us where Sanguinius is. And Konrad basically started crying. Oh, he wanted to cry, because Konrad's future sight wasn't working how it's supposed to. Konrad, his entire life, never worried about the future, because he could always see the future. He always knew the worst possible future was going to happen. This time in this warp storm, the warp storm was like fucking with his future sight. So he had no idea what was going on. And he basically just started tearing up, not knowing what's going on, just full bore until Gilliman and the Lion basically ignored him, trying to find Sanguinius. Now, Konrad escaped and was caught by Sanguinius and his ship. And so now Konrad was imprisoned on the Blood Angel ship, being imprisoned by Sanguinius. Now, Konrad was full-bore schizophrenic mode, full-bore just insanity, full-bore dementia mode. And Sanguinius, when they escaped the warp storm and were in real space approaching Terra, he basically told the Night Haunter the worst thing the Night Haunter could have heard. All Father still may forgive you, before then jettisoning him out into space, where he was then captured again by the Night Lords, and he was put back in command of the Night Lords. Obviously, the Night Lords were his legion. And so, well, then he was found by the Night Lords, and he essentially just, his future sight came back, and he essentially said, damn, yeah, my dad's gonna send an assassin any day now. And so he made all of the Night Lords essentially pledge allegiance that they wouldn't kill the assassin, so the assassin could then kill the Night Haunter. And by kill Night Haunter, I more mean like an assisted suicide. Now at this point, Konrad was essentially only in his chamber, waiting for the day for the assassin to kill him. And one of his sons essentially approached him and was like, why do you hate us? With no malice, nothing, no like ill intentions, he just directly asked Konrad, why are you the only Primarch to hate his own sons? And Konrad essentially said, I hate you because you're all criminal degenerates. And the Night Lord essentially said, but we're like you trained us. We were made in your image. You kill, you maim, and you torture, and you enjoy it just like we do. And Konrad, being a hypocrite, was just like, well, no, it's different when I do it. But this was just a sad scene, because at this point, Konrad went from a monster to an old man with schizophrenia and dementia. It was honestly sad to listen to, because he kept forgetting his favorite son, Sevatoi. He kept asking the other Night Lords, where's Sevatoi? And at this point, to the Night Lord's point of view, Sevatoi was killed, although we all knew that he joined the Grey Knights, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. He kept asking, where's Sevatoi? And the other Night Lords have to say, Sevatoi died, and the Night Haunter would just, like, go into... He'd just get really upset. He wouldn't even, like, go into a frenzy. He'd just be, like, genuinely upset. Imagine going to an old man with dementia, and the old man's asking where his wife is, and you have to tell him that his wife passed away. That's the kind of Konrad energy right now. And so him and his son went back and forth, and his son kept saying, you don't have to die. We can join the heresy. We can kill the Emperor. You don't have to let the Emperor kill you. And Konrad kind of went into a frenzy and attacked the Night Lord, but didn't kill him. And after being attacked, the Night Lord was still just like, I won't let you die to this assassin. We'll kill them. We'll hunt them. We'll kill them. And the Night Haunter just kept telling him, if I die, I will be vindicated. If this assassin kills me, that means all my visions were true, and that means that there were no possible ways to get better. Now, at this time, the Night Haunter fully believed that the Horus Heresy was planned by the Emperor, and that the Emperor designed him to be the scum he was. Now, although I do believe that, I don't believe that he had no choice in it. He could have been a good Primarch. He could have not joined the Heresy. But yet, he was like, nah, man, this is my future. This is what I'm going to do. So he essentially waited in his chamber for the assassin to kill him, and eventually the assassin showed up and killed him. And the other Night Lords vowed not to stop the assassin. They never vowed not to kill him. So after the assassin killed Konrad, the assassin went through months of the worst possible torture imaginable, until the Night Lords went to the Eye of Terror and essentially became skirmishy pirates. The Night Lords fell really far, and I think they were supposed to be a good legion. I do think Konrad was correct in the fact that the Emperor planned the Horus Heresy, and that Konrad was supposed to join the Heresy. But also, one thing to note is I do believe Konrad was supposed to be a Primarch of Law and Order. Like, I don't know. Even look at Chaos. Konrad was a sadistic freak who loved causing pain. Konrad would have been a perfect demon prince of Slaanesh. But yet, any time any Chaos Force tried to corrupt him, he'd basically just call it cringe and would just kind of, like, run away. So, he should have fallen to Chaos, but yet he said no. So I think at his core, he was a Primarch of Law and Order, although that Law and Order was sick and twisted by the end, but still not sick and twisted enough to fall to Chaos. Konrad's story is actually really sad, and man, I went from like jokingly saying, "Oh, Konrad's just a silly guy. I love Konrad," to actually feeling really bad for Konrad. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still a fucking maniac. He's still a monster. He's not redeemable at all. But in his eyes, he was born to be the monster he was, and he had no choice in it, even though he did. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed Konrad's summary. If you want, please read this audiobook on YouTube. It's free. That's, Konrad's story. This guy also has a lot of other good audiobooks. Now, please like, subscribe, comment, share the video, do everything you're supposed to do. Sorry this video was a little long, and I was a little all over the place. This was my first audiobook that I was breaking down, and this is actually the first Warhammer book I was ever breaking down. And I've actually recorded this video twice, and both times I deleted it because I didn't think it was good enough. I thought I was too scatterbrained, too all over the place. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please come back next time, and see you in the next one. Also, despite how fucked up Konrad was, I could never imagine him falling to Chaos. See you in the next one.